Latimer Brown House ad hoc. Mr. McCarty, would you mind saying our invitation?
Big time. Thank you, Lord, for allowing us to all meet here. We come to you as one of your weakest. Please give us guidance and strength. Watch over and protect us. Let us make good decisions. And lead, guide, and direct us. We're mindful to give you the praise both now and forever. Amen.
Amen. All right, do I have a motion for the approval of the agenda? I make a motion to approve the agenda. Motion by Commissioner Klein. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner McCard. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Motion for approval of the minutes. Motion to approve the minutes. Motion by Commissioner Klein, second by Commissioner Latimer. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Recognition of the public. There is none tonight. Old business, we have none. New business. A motion to suspend the rules for open table discussion with Mr. Coker. Motion to suspend. Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Mr. Coker, we do not, I apologize in advance, we do not, the hookup miscommunication is not, so we can show David's laptop. We did that last time, so my apologies. So if we show photos, David's, I'm probably going to just take his computer like this, and you guys can just do the best you can. So, Mr. Coker, Mr. Klein, I'll hand it over to you guys.
Go ahead, Chris. Give you the floor.
Well, I haven't been out to the house in a week and a half. I wrapped up I think y'all talked about this last week. I wrapped up our investigation, inspection-wise, rather, and I don't know what all, was talked about last week, but I think David and I are in very good confidence, feel very confident with what we've come up with, number-wise. We really haven't figured out a game plan of which section we're going to tackle first. I'd love to tackle the log section first, get all the brick off, and see what we got. There's still a lot of unanswered questions. It's still exciting, and it will always be exciting for me. But we just gotta talk through some numbers and some different things that we need to consider on this restoration. How really true you want to be to a restoration. I don't mean using square nails and all that, but there's some items in here we need to talk about that could affect the budget, per se. So, is there anything we need to add to that, David?
Well, first off, the bird that we saw in the picture last week
I was going to let you mention that.
was a mother buzzard and baby buzzards under the house.
Oh.
And when Chris was under the house, he saw that much of this heel. And so that's probably a Latimer child, because it looks like a pretty old shoe to me. Don't know for sure. I'm sure that some shoemaker can tell us what the date is on this shoe.
I would love to find out, because it has, the shoestring eyes to it. I don't know when they started doing that. That'd be a shoemaker, a true shoemaker would be able to say, oh yeah, this is whatever.
It does not say floor chime on it. Well, Chris and I spent about 3 hours coming up with this budget yesterday. And for those of you who don't have one in hand, we came up with a total minus architecture, because Jeremy reminded me that because it's over $25,000, $50,000? Over $50,000, we're going to have an architect. And I don't know what that architect is going to do. This is a 200-plus-year-old house, so he's not going to be designing anything. He's probably going to stamp his name to some documents, and that'll be the end of it.
And he gets his check.
So we're just shy of $410,000 for the work. And the big item in this is the log repair. We put $100,000 in there. And there's going to have to be some things. I told Chris that we own a building on the square that's over 100 years old, and we had the wood tested. And I think we should take piece of wood off of this and send it off to the lab on the East Coast that analyzed that and told us it was yellow, or southern yellow pine, and see if this is tulip poplar or what these logs are made of. I'm guessing tulip poplar, but I don't know for sure. And so, because they range, they're 8 inches wide for the most part, but they range from 16 inches to 24 inches is what I gather. You're not going to find them at the local Lowe's. And probably have some real trouble just going to some of these companies that make log cabins. My next door neighbor is a timber cutter named Don Bose, and he just got back from Florida. I'm gonna ask him if, I every day his log truck comes with, logs this big, so if we want to stay true to the wood, and that would be ideal, I'm to see what he can come up with. He usually cuts his logs in 8-foot sections, but that's it. We can talk him out of that. And then of course, it's having a mill that can cut logs that big in slabs of 8 inches. So, I have a qualification on the log repair, and I'll just read it. It's note number 1. It says, this should be a fairly conservative dollar amount at $100,000. Having said that, because of modifications made to the house, mostly windows and heating and air conditioning cuts, we don't know the full extent of log replacement that would be required. We need to find out what kind of trees the wood comes from, which I was just explaining. The logs are roughly 8-inch wide and varying height from 16 to 24 inches. These are much taller than most logs one can buy today. Chinking additionally is an unknown, as very little is visible, and for the reasons stated above. So, Chris opened up, when you walk into the log cabin, there's a bedroom to the right, and Chris opened up the whole.
So that's under the stairs?
Yeah.
I did not realize that, because I never did that part, so that was.
And, let's see, let me find. Okay. So, this is looking out the front of the house, and this is a window that probably was where the old window was located. They just opened it up. So Chris took off a bunch of this wall and a bunch of this, and that's when he determined that the logs are in really good shape. But you can see that the chinking, it's kind of hard to see. Mike and I were looking at it today, and we could see where a lot of the chinking was falling out. So we have a dollar amount of, and I think it's conservative, but it might not be $40,000 depending on what we encounter. But if I go on the other side of this,
all the chinking that is currently there now is concrete. I don't know what's behind it. Traditionally, back in the pioneer days, you'd mix mud, sand, clay, straw, and compact it. Obviously, that's all gone. So I don't know, because David said the logs are 8 inches thick. I don't know what they use. We don't know what they use for a filler. But we do know that everything is concrete. And that's somewhat typical. I've run into that before. So, the chinking, today's chinking is what's typically used. It expands and contracts with the seasons, and it doesn't crack, and it looks wonderful. It's kind of a sandy type finish, and it looks really wonderful. It would really brighten up this house. I don't know of another chinking product out there. You can go to log home websites all day long, and it's the same product. Permachink is what it's called. So
That's what you've used on the other
yes,
houses?
yes.
Totally, yeah. So you've removed concrete like this, and
Yes.
you use that new chinking.
As a matter of fact, at Bledsoe Historic Park at the Gibson cabin, Jane and them had me re-chink the entire inside, and it was all concrete. Had some wood in it, had rocks all in it. Had to take all that out, put some then you chink over it.
And it's probably done in the sixties, the concrete.
Probably so. I would say, me personally, whenever, I don't mean to get off subject, whenever they did the brick, the house went under extensive renovation. Because getting up in the original attic, you can see new boards for the decking for the roof. You have the tin. So, and then different floors throughout the house, subfloors and floor joists. I think the house went under a big time renovation back in the 60s.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It does, it really does.
Kind of took over. So one of the things, I don't know how well you can see this, but this is the upstairs bedroom looking forward. This is a newer window that I assume Mr. Brown put in, but the old window is right there. That poses some log problems because we're going to get rid of one of these, and I think we're partial to go to the old locations of the windows.
So if you look at Jim and printed some of these out, these old cabins, you can see this house is very similar to what it looks like this Latimer house. You see how the windows are right here? It's just two, and they're closer to the edge, which mirrors exactly what they found. So this period house in the 1780s is the same. It's the same kind of. So that's to answer your question.
Yeah, it looks like the corner connections.
Yeah,
I don't know if you saw these.
I haven't.
But the corner connections, I think, are very similar to ours.
We talking about like the dovetail?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's very indigenous of square logs.
So if we get rid of this window, we've got a 2-foot section of log here. This whole log has been hacked to make room for this window. So we're going to have to make a decision on what to do about those logs, and that's why we threw $100,000 in there, because we can't just splice them here where the windows are. It won't look right. We'll never find the exact size, and so we probably are going to need to replace 1, 2, 3, 4 logs just for that window, and there's no way around it, because whether we keep this and unless we wanted to just show where the old window was, and that's an option. That's an option. We can just block it out on the outside somehow, which is going to look really funky because we're going to go back to logs and get rid of the brick, I think. And it's just one of those things we're going to have to address. So
That's the big booger on this particular house is that in the 60s, whenever they potentially did all this, they, like David said, they just went in with a chainsaw and hacked all these logs. So when you're opening them up, they're not nice and straight. They're falling down. There's some sitting on top of each other. It's crazy. You shake your head thinking, wow, what were you thinking? Mm-hmm. Nothing. And the same way with that opening, that 12-foot opening, where you got a sag. You're thinking, why? Common sense tells you to put some sort of support in there, but these are some of the boogers that we have to tackle.
And then last week I talked about, I thought maybe the utility room, the area we called Area D, was probably a covered garden area or something. The reason we think that is when we went in the attic, there's the original hand-hewn rafters, and then there are rafter extensions that take the wall out another 10 feet. Now those are newer. I looked at those again today, and they're sawn, but they're rough sawn, so they came after the hand-hewn did, but they're fairly old. And if you're in what we call the B area or the dining room, this is looking to the south towards Wolfpack Way. And I've talked about this a little bit. This is a double door opening that might have been French doors or something that opened out to that side D area. And so, that's an item that we're going to have to discuss. Do we want to put double doors there? Do we want to close it up? I don't know. There's going to be a lot of decisions to make with this house. One of the big ones that Chris and I spent a lot of time talking about, it sounded like it's another decision we're gonna have to make. But we've got interior construction, we've got floor refinish. Now, we've got $6,000 in there, which is about $4 a foot. Because
oak plank from about 100 years ago.
well, it's that 2 1/8 inch tongue and groove 3/4 inch strip. Oh, now we could go in and refinish that, and it's not in bad shape at all now. However, last week when we talked about it, there seems to be the consensus in the room that we want to see the old irregular width planks. So I say in note 2 here, an alternative to refinishing that wood would be to remove all of the oak flooring. In area A, if the subfloor planking, which is newer, doesn't look period enough, we can overlay it with something that does look period, random width plank. We could do this in the second floor area as well, because what's under the carpet is plywood. And below the plywood, I think, is the beadboard it's 8-inch beadboard that Chris says would not have been original to the house. So if we wanted to, we could peel all of that up and just, have some 5/4 or 6/4 stuff run at one of the local mills, and we could put that in his floor, and you'd see the gaps, going up and everything. So those are a couple of options. In the B and C area, that's all original, and that's, like I say, I think, Chris, you thought it was 1.25 inches.
Yeah, I cut a small section out right in that doorway. I didn't know if we saw that.
Yeah.
To get through all that down to the roof.
So we could, if we pull up the oak, we could leave those planks, and all we have to deal with is the gaps to the dirt and the buzzards below.
I guess it comes out of cost. Is it more expensive to do that, or more expensive to refinish?
Well,
It comes down to cost and how original do you want to be. When David and I were talking about this yesterday, it's like the logs. You want to take out a double window and just put a piece in there. For me, I have to think, what are we trying to present back to the public? What are we trying to present back to the public within the, our budget per se? Do you want people to walk in and look at the floor and say, this is not original, or this doesn't look original, because it definitely doesn't? Do you want, or do you want to just, there's several different avenues we could go with this entire project. It just depends on how serious we want to be about restoration.
yeah.
And there's tearing up the floor just in the downstairs area, possibly taking all that narrow oak 2 1/4 or whatever, and putting wide planks flooring down, I think would be wonderful, because when you walk in, you see that, people aren't going to know per se it's not original, but it looks original. I think that's very important. So there's different things, different ways we can go, and we were talking about all this yesterday. So to put the budget together, it's we really need to, in my opinion, as someone who's doing this, I need to know which direction y'all want to go. I know which direction I would want to do it, but we don't have $1 million to do it. We have $500,000, and we can do it within $500,000. It may be tight, but we also have to take in consideration, unforeseen things. We have to take that in consideration. But
Would that be, I guess, to answer your question, I personally I'm all about as far as hard as we can go towards originality. Yeah, windows. If it's it comes down to your point, like when it comes to the stage of the project. I've watched enough home design shows to know that, well, this happened, so what are you going to cut?
Yeah.
Well, we do this, so it's like I think we've all seen it of that. So I don't think anybody has necessarily misgivings on that, but I guess it's knowing like where's your hard non-negotiables versus where's your flex points. So floors and windows to me would be a flex point versus a hard where you can show what the original form, almost like a box, like,
Yeah.
there was a place to do that. And so, it's not ideal, but it's, you know, knowing that, hey, this floor is 100 years old, this floor is 200 and something years old. So it's like, but their period, it just shows the evolution of the house. I mean, yeah, you can definitely craft a narrative as far as a storytelling aspect any way you want to for like placards and for the public. But I think that's just my personal opinion. It's far as hard as we can go, but knowing, I guess this, what are the give points that we have? And right now it's like floors and windows would be the give point.
Let me throw one caveat, because I've recently gone through this in our building on the square, which we think is anywhere between 1880 and 1910. We pulled out the old oak flooring on the upstairs. It had no subfloor underneath it. And we ran across nails that were this long. They used any spike they could find to put those floors in. And this floor could be older than that floor that we took up. So what we don't know is what we're going to do to the original 1 1/4 inch floor underneath it. Maybe nothing. Maybe we'll just get really lucky. But you have to do it carefully. And so, and then what will that wood? I mean, do we have old knots that have fallen out that we have to, you know, back block and then fill? We just, there's so many unknowns. But you know, the problem is we got to make these decisions before we get started, or we can do them as we go, and you know, based on the assessment of the guy who's done this many times. I was telling Jeremy, Chris was just gave White House a price on rechinking it to Jane Wright, because that kind of stuff needs to happen periodically. So, you know, we talked about putting a sealer on the exterior, and that, forget what he said.
It's got to be replaced. I mean, it's not.
Yeah, the sealer, we put in $8,000 for that, but that's not a permanent sealer, so that's going to have to happen over and over again, or we lose the logs. So, you know, there are things to upkeep this now. And Mike was, when I was over there with Mike today, Mike mowed the lawn in the yard. And we were talking about the brick. We were looking at the corner that Chris exposed. And, you know, Mike was saying, well, I don't have a problem with the brick. We can leave exposed areas and plexiglass over them or something. It doesn't give the full effect, but that is an option that we have open to us because the demolition of the brick.
I'd be opposed to that. I saw Tim Wentz about too, but it's an option. But
Well, I told him that when we were talking about it.
We got $10,000 in to remove the brick, so.
I was really surprised. I honestly figured,
non-negotiable.
I really figured the demolition of the brick was probably gonna be twice to 3 times what this shows. So, I mean, for that amount of money to take it back to the original log, I could go either way with it. It wouldn't bother me either way.
It appears to me, talking about the brick, that for whatever reason, it's not attached to the house. And I specifically took out.
So we could go out there with the sledgehammer and pull that crap down.
Literally.
Yeah. And therefore, the $10,000 in my mind, and I could be totally wrong, but I specifically took out good sized sections, thinking as a mason, I'm going to see some ties in here somewhere. I've got to see some ties within the first 4 or 5 courses that I've taken out. If not that, then at least length. So I'm thinking masonry-wise, and I didn't see all that. I'm thinking, what in the world? So yeah, the brick could potentially come down fairly easy.
Well, when I saw that, I went, my goodness, that's a lot cheaper than what I figured. I figured it'd be 3 times that, to be honest with you.
Well, now you know why.
Yeah, if it wasn't tacked in, or strapped in, I guess is what those little metal things.
And what's under that brick is, this is a piece of 1x6 tongue groove. Now, this was on the side. What's on the front is not tongue and groove, it's just random with boards. And then over all of that was this.
Siding.
So that was the siding that,
It'd be floating in water.
I have no idea when this stuff would have been manufactured. Did you have a date on this, Chris?
It's 30s, 40s, and 50s type material.
Yeah, right.
It is, oh, yeah.
They used to see it in houses all the time back in the 60s, and they were already built, so,
They used to put the gables on.
yeah. There'd be tiny nails, had little bitty holes in them.
Exactly right, yeah.
And if you missed, crack it,
Shatters it, yeah.
throw it away, get another.
Hardy plank yesterday.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it is, the original Hardy.
And then the last variable that is meaningful is in the original areas of section B and section C, you can tell by the cement stains on the studs that it was wood lath and plaster, which we think Chris stopped around the 1920s.
It did 1920s, 30s, when you started having drywall
Right.
being invented.
So that lath and plaster was probably put on whenever that extension, which we think was probably 1830s and 1840s.
The D extension or
The B and C.
okay.
So the question again that Chris posed is, how authentic do we want to go do? Because we didn't throw a drywall price in there, but I can tell you it's substantially cheaper.
So this is for lath and plaster?
No, this is well, yeah, this is for lath and plaster. Yeah, the one I did in red wall, that wall surface, wood lath and plaster would be about $20,000.
Would you even do that though? Because people can't see that it's been done. If it's done right, it's gonna be smooth and look like drywall.
Well,
Unless you do it rough and make it look like lath and plaster.
well, the thing about lath and plaster depended on the artisan who did it, because I've seen lath and plaster that did this.
Well, that's my point.
And I've seen it was perfect. The lath and plaster homes in Newport, Rhode Island are exquisite.
You do one and cover it, one wall and cover it in acrylic and show what it would look like half done, but do the rest in drywall. But I just want to do it all in drywall because nobody's going to look at the interior construction
Well, and
of a finished wall.
If it's not a wall, I would think this is like a modern invention. I would never know. I mean,
Yeah.
the public. I mean,
well, what we could do is the wall, this wall right here is actually an interior wall because we decided, I think, last week to keep all this as a utility area. We've got a bathroom back here, and this is the laundry room. We could put chairs or whatever. And so we could actually leave the wall surface open so they could see what the framing looked like, because it's very different than anything you see today. I've got pictures of it.
Yeah, but then you kind of mess with the functionality of the house for whatever it's going to be used for.
Well, and what is it going to be used for? We think it's going to be used similar to the bridal house, and probably because it's on school grounds, it'll be used for schools to look at, which we get to do tours. Yeah.
But as far as that goes, you could put a small sample of what lath and plaster looks like on
Yes, you
each
could.
old.
Yes, you
If you
could.
want to sell that off and do the rest of the house and drywall, be done with
But
it.
this is typical of the framing of that whole B and C area. It's like a 3x4 at 2 feet on center, and then it's got this very strong cross brace. It looks like German.
Where's the bathroom?
Well, this is the dining room. All the walls in B and C are framed the same way.
can you explain plaster over wood laid? What do you mean by wood?
Wood slats.
Slats.
Yeah,
Slats of wood and.
they're like 3/8 inches thick and about.
Like put a bunch of yardsticks.
Yeah, that's exactly
Mud
what
all
it
over it.
Yeah, that's what.
That's lath
Yeah.
and plaster.
Yeah, well, what you do it neatly, like I said, you won't see it at all. But what is the material? Does it feel like drywall?
Yeah,
It's like,
plaster, it's what's inside of it.
so it's just gonna look like, I mean, what's it like a rough, just stucco concrete?
The way it's done is they would nail this wood lath, and it's about the size of a grating stake. We saw grating stakes out there. They're about this wide and about this thick. So they run them horizontally, and then a mason comes in and he puts a scratch coat on. So he's pushing it through the gaps, because there's like 1/4-inch gaps between the slab, so it'll bind it. Then he comes back.
Like brick,
Yeah. Then he comes back with what they call a brown coat, which is screeded and pretty flat. And then the final coat is a plaster coat, plaster of Paris, more or less. And that's what goes on really nice. Or they texture it.
So what do you think the age of that would have been done for those rooms? 1800s, 1830s, 40s? Okay, that's what they did back then?
Yeah. And they did it all the way up to, I rebuilt a house that was built in 1910 that was all wood lath and plaster. They transitioned in from probably 1920s to the 1940s is when they phased that out, because gypsum board was used as a ballast labor, less labor.
Mining, that probably became more of a manufacturing process, got better.
And cheaper.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a prime example of the area of how extent do you want to go.
So it could be all of those give areas, like, if the goal is to go, let's do it if we can, but if you had to start, like, if we ran into a major problem, like, gosh, we need $50,000 because we just found this, okay, what can we cut some back to a lack of, this to me seems like it'd be
You have trouble finding.
Me personally would almost say, David, let's do the dining room, which is B, back in lath and plaster.
Yeah.
it's small.
And then because it's small, and then the back section, because would be more likely a kitchen or something, we could go back we could do drywall over there.
Yeah, I mean, we could do, the thing is with a building like this, nobody's gonna ever live in it again. So leaving sections of wall open so that you can see what the framing looked like in the 1830s and 1840s compared to log cabin construction. If we want it to be a learning event, then we should, if we want to show sections of the original floor, or we want to make it look like totally, it depends on what we want to do with the building, and of course, that's county decision, but if we have this 501c3 that's going to be the custodian of it, and especially since we have family members, that's another, we need
In
to
the same
make
manner that the Friends of the Bridal House
Right.
are custodians of the Bridal House, which is county-owned property. It's
Right,
not,
right.
This would be the same thing,
It would
clear
be-
public record here.
Yeah, that would be the same thing.
I think you do it as cost efficient as possible and leave a small section to show and tell if you're gonna do any of it. Because if you do a whole room in it, just to do a whole room in it, you're still probably not gonna leave the whole backside of the wall showing it. You're probably still gonna leave just a small section of it.
Well, I've done lath and plaster, and so say for instance, on this floor right here, which is the back of the dining room, we wanted to lath that whole section to the doorway in wood, and then we wanted to come in and do the scratch coat, and then come in a little more and do the brown coat, and then come in a little more and do the plaster coat. Now somebody can see how it was done 100 years ago.
But even that could be done in a very small section.
Yeah. I'm talking about a wall section that's probably 8 feet.
So the right of that is the actual kitchen, right?
See, here's the door into the kitchen. So if you wanted to do that section like that as an example of what wood lath and plaster look like and wood lath and plaster.
But even that wouldn't be all the way to the ceiling. It'd be a section.
We can do it any way we want.
Eye level maybe or something.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the majority of it being done in sheetrock.
Right.
So that's where we get our budget from, and then you can look at back figure and how much to do this artistic section in wood lath and plaster.
Yeah. And Chris and I don't know what the ceiling looks like. It may be lath and plaster that's covered over with drywall. Because a lot of people wouldn't screw with tearing all that down and being underneath it. They would just cover it
The
up.
ceiling's in good shape though, right?
Huh?
Ceiling's in good shape.
Ceiling's
right?
in good shape, but we don't even know what it is. When you go up above this area in the attic, I was trying to pull away that blown-in insulation, and when you hit it, it sounds like wood. So the ceiling may be wood plank. I don't know. We haven't gotten that.
But we probably won't mess with it regardless, as they could say, right?
I don't know.
Unless that's the part that needs to be evicted or whatever.
I don't know what, old houses in the 1830s and 1840s, I don't know what their ceilings look like.
Is that one we should vote on, which direction we want to go with, or we conference still that one?
I'm not listening to the conversation.
On the wood bound versus drywall. Just back to what
I don't think that's a decision we need to make. I think it's, because right now it's for doing it, it's in the quote, we're $140,000 under the money we have.
Yeah, but he said it'd be considerably less with drywall versus this, and we got this
Sure.
one now.
Sure, but I mean,
Direction.
this is about, right now, the total quote we know of so far, so why take it out if we don't have to? No, that we can give. I mean, that's what we talked about earlier. Right?
Yeah, that's our buffer, that's our,
Well, we got windows, it could be a buffer where we don't go back to the original window configuration. We got floors, it could be a buffer where instead of replacing the floors in living room A to match B and C or the upstairs, we just refinish those and do, cut them. I mean, these are I'll say flex points. Right now,
price points, I'm sorry.
so, but the floor refinish, this is for stripping. This is for refinishing it.
Refinishing it.
Not putting their board, so we would need to increase that price by for the flooring on that floor, instead of floor refinish should be, floor refinish should be floor replacement.
Be replacing, remove and replace.
Correct, so that'd be an extra cost we're not accounting for yet, so.
Right.
That's the, 1 1/4 back to
Back to the, yes,
make plain.
yes, to match the original from B and C where original flooring's there.
Did you find out that is underneath, or we have to?
Yeah, it is, because
So all the floors are there.
yeah, but in B and C, it's all the original flooring is underneath that open strip, which then is covered with a.
You said A, it's not, because it's a concrete foundation,
Yeah.
it's just that same floor from the early 1900s or whatever.
Yeah, see, they put in a concrete brick here, I think to accommodate the stove, pot-bellied stove that was there. And over here, it's a brick pattern linoleum. And so, but under the linoleum is the wood.
So all the floors have original floors underneath of them.
No, not the A section.
No, A doesn't.
A is because they replaced that whole floor structure somewhere later.
Okay, that's one.
Yeah, that shows like.
Probably changing back to now.
Right.
So an update, I guess we could, to the spreadsheet we can get from you guys, is like, here's option, floor refinish, but, maybe another note down here, the floor demo replace, what's the cost? I mean, you just add it, whatever, but I mean, or swap it out.
Yeah.
Floor refinish, we can move that down, and floor replace, move it right here under interior construction, demo, and let's.
Is that an either or?
Yeah, be an either.
Yeah, but I'm saying let's move this out and move it out. I'm just saying if you can update you guys can, that way we can.
Two totals right here. One would be with this and one would be with that.
Well, I'm not getting that complicated. I'm just saying pull finish out and put it as a note. Here's another option, put an asterisk or something and just only have it replaced. Just let's not complicate it.
And put the totals of that.
Correct. Right now we're in good shape. We're $140,000 under budget so far. That doesn't, about that question, and here's where, according to county policy or I didn't print this out for you guys, but I'll make sure you guys have this. Basically, we're in the process of initial concepts, which is giving a detailed explanation of need, type of structure. One thing I guess we need to figure out, like square footage. You guys roughly know how many square footage.
1,500.
This is about 1,500 square
It's
feet.
30 by 50.
All right, so it's 1,500 square feet, roughly.
And that doesn't include upstairs, which is another 600.
Oh, so it's about 2,100.
Yeah, it's about 2,200 square feet.
Okay.
So the footprint is 15 and then there's 600 upstairs.
All right. So then after that, and this is where we need to talk to Mr. Warren. My understanding right now is according to TCA, Tennessee Code indicated that we've got to get an architect involved. Again, you made the comment, David, you don't understand why an architect, what there would be to do. I'm just curious to hear you guys, let's discuss that a little bit, like why would we have an architect?
Well,
Outside of, say, law requiring us to, but like, do you even need an architect on the project?
I know what he's doing.
So it's just a waste of money.
Well,
It is because, go ahead, I'm sorry.
It violates every code on the books right now. I mean, it's a log cabin, it doesn't have, you know, it does have insulation and stuff, but there's nothing about that house.
Stairs are low.
Yeah, the
Steps after the stairs onto the next.
yeah, there's nothing that would be code compliant on that house.
So my question, like, for example, the Bridal House, or these other historic homes you worked on, I mean, they're not code compliant in modern building techs, they can't be, because they're historic homes.
Well, when there's a certain amount of grandfathering in that's allowed. And if you're going back time period wise, you know, it depends on, you know, public use. If you're gonna open this up to the public full time, you know, you have to have handicap parking spots, you have a sprinkler system, you know, ADA requirements in the bathrooms. And so when you don't open up all that, then you don't necessarily have to do all that. You bypass all that.
Our goal is not.
You still have to do some type of permitting, you still have to do some type of permitting.
Well, yeah, but you'll have to have electrical.
Right.
You have to have that.
HVAC, so, water, sewer, I guess, which is all there on site still, but I guess my question is, you mentioned like the difference between being open full time, which is like 7 days a week or 6 days a week, all day, you know, daylight, you know, dusk to dawn, versus the intent is, like other historic buildings in Sumner County, they're managed by somebody or group. They select hours it's open, or select weekends or events, so it's not open all the time for somebody to come and be just selectively open, just like the Bronner House. We're using the Bronner House. Yeah, same model. Yeah, same type, older than the Bronner House, roughly the same period. That being said, that because of that, it doesn't follow the same requirements. It's not open all the time. Right. Like this building is open all the time.
Well, even Rosemont. Rosemont's not open to the public full time. Yes, Kate is there for tours, but it's not, I mean, it's not open to the public 24/7. So you don't have to have certain things that today's codes would require.
Do you know Rosemont?
Yeah, I've never been there, but
Yeah, it's a really cool house.
that's good to know. I mean, because that's going back to the why do we have to have an architect? So I'd be curious to. This is a unique situation. It's not like a normal county building. I'd be curious to talk to our finance department and legal to understand. Like, do we really have to have this as part of the process, or what? Because there's nothing to do. But so I guess that would be a good question for us to ask.
Oh,
That's going to save us a lot of money.
Me personally, I think on historical structures, unless you're just adding a huge wing onto it, especially in demo, when like we're doing now, there's no need for an architect, because you will uncover, like we have, windows or doorways that an architect didn't see. So why draw all that up? And all of a sudden then our game plan changes, you know, because we have a window or a door or whatever covered up. So let's figure out what the original configuration was and then work around that. And when I said in our very first meeting, you let the house dictate what you do. An architect's not going to do it. The house will do it. Right. And so you're spending $10,000 on an architect just to say, look at these drawings. Well, yeah, they're no good because we found A, B, C, and D. And now everything's changed.
Would be like to spend $10,000.
Tim was laughing because that's a generous number that Sumner County comes up with, but it's what a normal human being comes up with, not government.
Yeah.
Sounds like a lot. All right.
So, unless you're just putting on a huge addition to modernize whatever.
Well, that's good, because I'm going to find that out. It's a question. It's a question, because.
But if we have to, just draw what's there now. I mean, just something basic, dimensions, where the walls are. You don't have to put bathrooms in there. Almost what we have now. I mean,
That's the goal I know we had last week with this footprint.
Yeah.
Like, knowing that David, so when you guys looked at the roof structure, and I guess beams or trusses coming out, this had to be some kind of covered porch or something, at least in the 1800s, maybe 1800s or something.
Well, see, that's what I thought it may have been because of the double doors. I bet there was a porch here at some time.
But you said because the roof structure makes it evident it comes out over that, so it would have been original to when this B and C were built, so that done, therefore we're like, well, let's keep this, because like as a, like more, if there's anything modern, yes, because that's where the bathroom would be, if you needed a sink or whatever, or like a little small area, like a little meeting table for like a kitty, whatever.
What do the floors look like on that room?
That floor looks like under D,
I don't know.
They look real similar to what's under A.
or he does. Do you think under A or under B?
Or the floor structure?
You mean under B and C right here, or under A?
The structure from the underside, because he crawled underneath there, looks very similar to A.
Got concrete?
Oh, you talking about under D?
Yeah.
So it probably wasn't like it.
But I think it's linoleum, and we didn't peel it up.
I think, it contradicts itself. I think D was an addition, but when you go in the attic and you see the old timbers, you're thinking, now that very well could have been, which was typical, a wooden floored porch,
That's what I'm thinking.
and they tore it off.
Because you want to have.
And that would make more sense.
Well, you want to have visual front door and back door. Back in those times, you want to see who's coming from both sides.
Oh, yeah.
And there is no real access on the kitchen side over here, little bitty door, but that back porch would provide a great view.
You have a double door, yeah.
I mean, I guess that's a question. I mean, do you keep it enclosed, or do you like,
It'd be cool to make it porch.
make it a
I
porch?
think it would be too.
In window, but I mean, maybe it's a porch, but with windows, like, I don't have to go in the back of theirs, it's windowed in.
You could.
Yeah, they did a great job on that.
Yeah, you could open 3/4 of it up and then have the other section that maybe towards the tail end of the house for storage and enclose that.
I'm thinking more bathroom here. If there's an existing bathroom, we get rid of that, because that's there, the plumbing's there, make that handicap accessible. Bathroom, turning radius for a wheelchair, handicap, grab bars, everything, just make this where it's anybody can use this bathroom, handicap or not.
Yeah, we would need a bathroom.
Correct, and you're not worried about the one upstairs.
No, we'll tear that out.
Tear it out, turn it back into, there wouldn't have been one up there.
Yeah.
There wouldn't have been one here.
You would,
Point being, strip that, you only need the one. But I guess that's another good question we haven't thought about, is you want to make this like a sunroom with a bathroom, closed off in this section.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
I do too.
Reason,
I like the open back porch, but
either way. Well, I think, this is something to think about, is like, is there any kind of use space for people actually using this space? Like, if you're gonna have like a group come in of 15 people, and you're gonna do a period, and it's raining, and you're gonna have a period thing, you're gonna have a monthly or quarterly thing, where we're gonna do basket weaving or whatever, or, coonskin and, make hats, whatever we're gonna do, or not, like, whatever it is, you wanna make it where it's an actual, I'm not saying craft room is not the word, but it's a usable space, not an open air where you're gonna preach a butt off in January.
Well, you definitely
outside.
I'm just thinking ahead of like what
It could be either those, you could do half walls, you could do roll down, clear windows like restaurants do.
we got an idea from the audience.
I worked at Douglas Park,
Okay.
and having a space that you can hold more than like 3 people in would, just from an interpretive perspective, would be great.
That's what I'm thinking.
Because like if it rains or we did a sort of kickoff or whatever, like I don't have space for people to come and hang out at all, hardly.
I think it'd be a great idea if we could use it for that purpose of having 12, 13, 15 people in this space, small, but like, if it's people that,
If you're gonna have students coming through or whatever,
we know about original back.
We've got section C, which is huge.
It's 20 by 20.
Yeah, it's a huge section
garage.
that we could, that we need to utilize some way.
yeah, because we're gonna tear out the kitchen,
Okay, well, maybe, okay.
and that is a good gathering.
D could be flexible though, like you could do half walls and roll down, clear things like restaurants do to make it.
Okay. So you're saying that multi-use space could possibly see.
Yes.
That
That's
out.
what I would.
And then we could do this, if this is probably a covered porch, we could go back to.
I think a covered porch is wonderful and wonderful aesthetically to that house.
Okay.
I really do.
That's even better, because that's less cost. Yeah, and especially if you have that utility.
Try to look out for you.
That's great. Well, we haven't discussed
comfortable in certain weather. I mean, you still put people out there.
6 to 8 months, 6 to 8 months a
It'd be
year.
a couple of years, yeah, it's just like, yeah, prevailing winds are coming from the opposite side of the house.
We have an original smoker up there, and
We're gonna hear some hands.
Hey, there's smoke out there right behind it.
There is.
Well, we know, I might have to be a little bit like.
You're gonna waste all that raccoon.
Thanks for entertaining my questions, that helps clarify. I think that to bring it, this is how, to answer your questions, I think this is, what is the house telling us it needs to be, then that's great, this is covered for, so let's make it, if there's room to have like space.
I just think utility, people have a certain, no matter what time period it is, when you see a Victorian in the mid-1800s, late 1800s, you have a mindset of what it's going to look like inside. So when you see a 1790s log house, people, like the floor, people are going to expect to see wide plank floors.
Right.
People are kind of going to expect to see a porch where Grandpa was smoking his corn pipe, you know, in the afternoons after being in the field all day. You expect to see things like that. Goes with the time period.
That's great.
It really does.
Even better.
I have a question. Under the electrical, you're gonna be able to use the way it's already wired, well, you're gonna be able to use the current wiring?
We've got to get that inspected as well as the current HVAC units.
Okay.
The units seem to be in good shape.
Yeah, I looked-
They've been sitting there.
I looked at one of them.
I did have an electrician, reach out to me about this when I talked about it, and this is Sumner County White House volunteered his time to work on it for free, so that's one thing we mentioned. There might
Free, can he pull permits?
I don't know, it's, to ask.
It'll have to be, that is a state requirement.
Yeah, I'm just saying, so,
Yeah.
so my point being, going along with that, we discussed it last week, there are local artisans and craftsmen that would be willing to chip in as a part of this as well, to provide free labor just for the thing as well, you know, which is, it's something to consider that we might be able to save cost on, to be able to then use that to beef up something else.
Yeah.
Is the fact that we might have some community involvement in donating. I mean, and we've got to reach out to the community, see if the community that would be interested in donating to this effort for any region, so, which is another part of this. I mean, right now, we're just like, this is what we have, we just need to do it without asking people for money, but I mean, people might want to, so I don't want to.
Well, it'd be definitely worthwhile to get the historical community, and particularly Kenneth Thompson, who's over Sumner County's Historical Society, to send an invitation out to some people to say, hey, this is what we're doing. What do you think? I know we'll get a bunch of different ideas. We need to say we're going to do A, B, and C. And we're going to stick to it. But to have historians come in and feel a part of it, kind of like the artisans, I think is important.
Yeah, we're going to need to have that type of story told on, like it does Park House, and really graphics and board like signage and just stuff that explain like the exhibits. Like we're going to have to do it outside of this. What is that? Yeah, I think that's what a good place for a historical society in Sumner County, and it
Might be a good idea to have maybe a history of the Shackle Island community. You know, there's not a central location that has any, really history of the Shackle Island community, which is a pretty historic community out there. And
would you say that's part of Shackle Island, or is it Canada? Like,
it sort of lies in between.
I consider it Canada. So,
Yeah.
But
that was owned by everything down New Hope to there was all one property, right?
Tracts of property.
That's why he said Shackle Island.
Yeah.
so that would have been considered Shackle Island.
It would, thus and growing up out there consider Shackle Island. Now, Ocana's over there, and some people now consider it Gallatin. So,
The oldest church in the county, as I understand it, is a little further up on
the station county.
on the right, on the east side.
Yeah, it's a Baptist church.
Is it a Baptist church?
I think it is.
Hey, question for you.
Okay.
Back to the laundry area.
D.
Is there any mention of any work going on in this cost estimate?
Yeah.
Where is it?
We've got interior construction, insulation in
D walls only, right there.
Is it downstairs bathroom rework? Is that?
Insulation, wall surfaces?
Yeah, I think it's bathroom rework would be D.
Okay, so it'll chip into some of those things, but as far as what to do with that, if we do decide to go that route by making it a porch or whatever, some of that would need to be reworked, but it may take away from some of those other projects. But turning it back into a porch may entail changing the flooring or something like that, that may need to be looked at.
Yeah.
Maybe a wash once it's all.
The track boards are period pieces, right?
Huh?
The track boards, the.
Yeah.
It's plastic.
Plastic, yeah.
That's authentic.
We need some chamber pots too. That was authentic back then. Cindy and I yesterday went over to the Douglas Park House and toured. A young lady that spoke actually was our tour guide.
I'm Linda.
She was our tour guide. And they've done a great job over there with their posters and everything. You can sit there and look, you can see the four brothers, the one that survived the Civil War. I mean, you can just follow it all the way around through the rooms. They did a great job.
It'd be great to do that with some spotlighting and
Yeah,
stuff.
and I think you could use Ocana and Chapala both, in that some type of, poster board or whatever you're going to do. I'm not sure who did theirs, but I mean, they're very colorful, their information.
Use info.
Yeah, it's very, they did a great job with that over there. And I can see using that type of thing, especially these.
We'd be doing it for ourselves. That was part of the grant, so that's why.
Right, yeah.
Committed to different, open full time, having that.
Yeah, no, I understand, I understand all that. Yeah.
But the signs he's referring to can be done on Canva and printed out on a stone, it's on a foam-filled poster board, so it's nothing
And then you can use
super,
seal it.
and you can just,
Or, yeah,
ours isn't even sealed, it's just
Hanging on the wall.
to the wall.
Yeah, that's great.
And
Or you
that's
can just
something,
plexiglass over it.
that's something I would be willing to help with when we get to that stage,
That'd be
just
awesome.
throwing that out there. I have to
Leave
agree
your
with
contact
interpretation.
information.
We need to know a price and how long it's gonna take.
I already get paid.
Yeah, 3 weeks.
I already get paid, and I have many hours of research that I'm already doing, so, I mean, I'm already throwing Latimer stuff into its own folder as I go.
That's awesome.
If those who have already done a lot of that research can throw some of that my way, I would be
Do you have a
willing.
card?
Y'all need to.
I do not have a card yet, but I can give you my email.
Yeah, you can, I'll give you that.
Yeah.
Well, and Chris, you're a member of a lot of these historic societies around Sumner County. So, I don't know how that, do they look like, I was thinking when we were talking yesterday, man, if you could find a potbelly stove from the 1800s, connect back to that.
You and I were talking the other day. I can talk to Ryan over at the museum. They're wanting to move eventually, and they've got several of the potbelly stoves over there.
Oh, they do?
I guarantee he'd probably just say, take it. So we don't have to fool with it.
They don't have to move it.
Yeah, have you done anything that period stuff like, because what we do, when you get to it, like, you'll need to stage it and furnish it as best as possible.
Right.
Period, or replica pieces, like, this is what it would look like, the little milling area or whatever,
Yeah,
kitchen.
but the information boards, with pictures to tell the story, and when you get back into B and C, this was added circa 18.
Yeah, that was what I
think
had.
that's wonderful. Not only with the house looking at it tells a story, but you can read it, and I think that's very informational.
And if anybody wants to go over to the Douglas Park, they're open, Tuesday through Saturday.
Yeah, Monday through
Yeah.
Friday.
9 to 4:30.
Tuesday through Saturday,
Yeah.
the cool docent, which is me, is there Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. But I was gonna say, we also have a coalition now with all the historic sites here in Sumner County. So if you reach out to one, theoretically, they should be able to reach out to the rest of them and see what they have that they may not need.
Can we reach out to you?
Yeah, I can reach out.
You seem perfect.
You ought to go to the tour. She did a great job. She liked us.
We could take, a field trip,
Field
like
trip.
Saturday, if you guys wanted to a couple hours, obviously go, visit, the Latimer, go to the Park House, and just go, I think
do a field trip, you know,
I think that'd be wonderful.
go to the Bravo House.
Well, so everybody here can, you know, you see pictures all day long, but when you physically see it,
Yeah.
now you know what we're talking about. But like the floors and the framing in the walls and different things.
Yeah, speaking of pictures, I showed Mike today. This is what was laddered onto the walls upstairs. It says Tennessee Methodist, November 10th, 1892. And we probably want to keep that stuff.
Oh, absolutely, cover it with glass, cover it so it's safe.
So, David, I did some research on that. Not
Yeah.
long after. So, Tennessee Methodist was a publication that came out. Obviously,
Not Baptist, I'm sure.
yeah, it was in the late 1800s. So whoever was living in the house at the time had this publication and covered the walls with it.
They had a Methodist publishing house in Nashville.
They sure
Yeah.
did.
That's probably where it came from.
But there's all kinds of stuff. I mean, there was a shoe in the basement underneath the floor there. You know, there's some really cool wallpaper over
Said shoe.
history that
Hey,
been said.
that'd be cool to display.
Absolutely.
I really cleaned that up too.
You polish it.
I did. I put some leather conditioner in there. You know that you talk buried in mud, right? Huh? Half buried in mud. Yeah. Oh yeah. All you could see was the arch of the back heel.
Yeah,
And I dug around to see if there was another one.
dug it out.
That's pretty lame.
Because the buzzards were attacking.
What buzzards are attacking? St. Clark right there.
And he found his gardens.
They probably wore it.
Wore it out.
Stick it out.
Yeah.
Your kid.
That's one is
30 degrees, so they used cardboard.
So is,
Stick in when you're sold.
is there anything for else to discuss with this? Or is, I mean, I guess we do, talking next steps, because obviously this budget is paramount to have steps. We've also used some options for you, Chris, to talk about like how we modify the budget. But like, I'm trying to figure out how can we move this, like, when's this gonna be right to send it, move it on up? And,
What do you need about it?
We won't be able to bring this before the committees until the 1st of July.
Okay.
So we got a month. I would like to push this up 1st of July, like, here's some stuff, let's start talking, here's what we do. But I think we could definitely do another ad hoc if we need to, before then. But we would need pretty much about a mid of June, 2 weeks before the next Gen Ops meeting, which is gonna be,
Do we need to do anything interior-wise, exterior-wise?
Well, it sounds like,
I mean, I know we don't have dumpsters or anything like that, but it's, you know, with trailers, we can haul off stuff, we can, or are we not 100% sure this is going to come to fruition?
we don't know. I mean, if we're gonna be positive,
Yeah.
and be, I think on the bright side, we're gonna say yes to all the above. We're not gonna have a problem getting a driveway in or a parking lot. Yeah, we're not gonna have problems doing anything. I mean, if people wanna give us problems, then that's just, we'll have to do those real as we go, and it's gonna be what it is. But we're, I guess, at this point, I think we need to think positively, hope for the best, pray for the best. So July 7th is our next Gen Ops meeting, so we would need to have, about the 23rd, I would need to get some information to our finance department as far as like any plans or budget requests, like basically like square footage, you know, this tightened up, like worst case scenarios, and I'm gonna inquire about the architect, like what does TCA really say in this situation? Does it apply? Is it, I mean, we're not building a new structure.
So in order to get that information, we really need to nail some things down, or at least say, okay, we're going to tear up the floor and we're going to go back with.
Well, that's what I just
We need to
told David. I want the deconstruct and reconstruct option on the floor. Let's build this out for worst case scenario.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, the logs have to be done in the walls, outside walls, right there, you're gonna have siding.
We'll have, yeah.
And let's keep in the fact that we want to go back to original windows in here. If that's in here, let's keep that. But what we do need to add the floor that's not in here. I don't know. I don't think there's anything else that I saw other than me asking about the architectural fees with finance and legal about that, like how that works. And I know there would be several architects that we could get to provide estimate quotes. We had to have somebody do something. I mean, just have Again, I'm curious how these other homes.
But see, I've never had to have one, but nobody's ever questioned me about it. Even when I pull permits, the codes guys.
Well, have you ever had to have a legislative body vote on 13 votes? Argue from the floor for 2 hours about $400?
No.
Okay, it's a different,
Yeah.
this is why people hate government. That's why I hate government.
Is the wiring in the house, was it replaced in the 60s, or does it go back further than that, and they just?
I have not seen anything that there was knob and tube.
It's all Romex.
It's all
Okay,
Romex.
so it's all Romex.
Yeah. If there was at one time, it's all done. It's all gone.
And, that's one of the things that Chris and I were talking about, is how much electrical do we need or want in that building? I mean, if you do a residential.
We want spotlights everywhere.
Then
We don't want it dark. We want to be. We want
Track lights, you want track lights.
To really light up the area.
Well, if we go back with the original windows, let's just say we replace logs and we go back to original.
Darker.
It's going to be dark.
So we're going to need interior illumination. So I would say, but definitely for the fact that if you're going to have displays on walls, we're going to need that track lighting, spotlighting, or whether, when you go to the bridal house, they've got spotlighting, track lighting. It's just well lit in place in the corners, and you're hitting the right spot, able to bring that highlight. But it's not everywhere. You don't have lights like these.
Any plus plugs that are throughout the house, a lot can be done with plugs.
I mean, I would say,
And then that's.
I'm all about putting plugs every 12 inches. The more the merrier, but
You can't have to.
If the upstairs is going to be utilized as basically storage and really not done anything with, there's a lot of circuits that'll be freed up.
I think the upstairs, would be more just like, hey, you walk around and look at the upstairs in the bridal house. I think you go upstairs and look, but it's not like cramped. To be the same, and it's that little narrow staircase.
Oh,
You're just
yeah.
like, oh my gosh, you can't go there and look here.
But it also is easier storage.
Now, the Bright House isn't. The Bright House is, they've got it set up like it's your living,
Like, what would
here,
that
you
look
live in
like
a house.
for family? I think
Upstairs is.
Theirs is closed off, you can't do it.
Oh, you can't, that's
Our upstairs is closed off. I was told that county didn't want people going up there. I don't know.
Here again, that's a different situation, because that has to be, because the.
That is a grant.
That is, because of the grant, we're doing like a bridal house, kind of like, who cares?
You go upstairs all the time.
Fireman's hole, come down. It's more,
But we can do whatever we want.
we're not under the same restrictions as the Douglas courthouse.
Yeah, because of the grant, because.
The state's involved in that one. It's like it's in code of grant restrictions, and so it's a lot more,
Well, when I did Rosemont, and that was funded by the state through a grant, they didn't, we turned the back section into the original, 2-story porch, but they didn't say anything. They were just tickled to death that it was getting done and back to original, and they didn't say, well, you need a sprinkler here. Well, you got to make sure your rail height is 36 inches. There were no provisions. They were just tickled to death that it was being.
How long ago was that?
Last.
Current, yes, current.
Oh, yeah.
that's great. Well, hopefully that's the case. I think, seriously, we need to finish it out in the computer.
Who owns that house now? Rosemont.
I think the county owns it.
I think so. Is it the county?
City of Gallatin, they own it.
The city of Gallatin.
They own it. City of Gallatin City.
Because they mentioned paying John quite a few times about going to her for things, so I would assume.
It's City of Gallatin.
The city of
Government, just the wrong government. Yeah. They do events out there. They have Gallatin does, fundraisers.
Oh, yeah.
Over at the Douglas Clock, I noticed in the rooms that are logged, and there's logs in the building, they use the, I guess it's galvanized pipe, that they run the electrical. That's how they did it. They just drilled right through the logs and run the piping to do, they didn't go through in the wall. Now, the newer section, you had plugs and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in the older section.
Yeah, that's what,
the inside or the outside first because of weather. We can't just open everything up. But if we open up those chinking joints, that's a wonderful way to hide. Or they might like, because I personally hate seeing all the exposed stuff.
That's a great point. You know, there's a big difference between those two houses the way they're constructed too. Yeah.
I will say, as someone who works in a historic house, please put plugs like upstairs though, because if you have an electric vacuum, it's really hard to clean in the back side of my house where there are no electric outlets.
No, I would say electric, lights upstairs, plug upstairs,
Yeah.
for sure, just because.
Downstairs, we can put them all on the floor. We don't have to necessarily worry about them in the chinking joint. We put them on the floor.
That's a great idea. So I think, this has been, I don't know, if you guys have any more to present or discuss.
Well, yeah, I want to have a to-do list. So you said give substitute prices for the floor options.
If I were to rent out.
Yeah.
And rebuild.
And I'm going to talk to the architect, Robin E. Hood, about,
Well, I want to talk to finance and legal, see like,
Yeah.
where do we fall here on this? Like, what, there's a sign off, we're not architecting anything, we're not even changing this, other than just bringing stuff to the code, it's just like, the header you're gonna fix, it's not Drew.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So, those types of things, it's only improving the building to make it stable.
We're not changing the floor plan.
You're not knocking out walls, you're actually gonna.
On area D, we've got a bathroom that obviously needs to be inside.
Yeah, I would say if you're gonna expose this, you keep this obviously enclosed.
Right.
Almost like a full house, you do that, and you got your open, this and
So
that.
somewhere along the line, we should build a wall.
With this complete wall encased in, you're.
Right, and then we would get rid of
It's already a wall.
this exterior wall here,
And make it a porch.
and that double door opening that's in this wall could look out on top.
Correct. Put a door in.
Turn to an exterior door and an exterior wall.
That's what I was saying earlier. You use 3/4 of it for a porch, and the other half, or the
Your bathroom.
other 15 feet, use it for a bathroom.
That's right.
You actually make the bathroom a little bigger.
Well, yeah, it's big enough.
Yeah, because you've got 30 feet
It doesn't have to.
from here to
Yeah.
here, right?
You should.
Yeah.
And that way you should. It's a neat, I don't think it's a hot spot. Make it big.
So you're gonna add a door right here?
Well, there's one right here,
Right.
and we could put a wall right there.
Just depends on how big the porch.
And I think we want to get the effect of a porch, so somewhere along the line, we'll put a wall there, and we'll get rid of all this exterior wall.
Yeah.
Does there need to be some kind of provisions made for maybe a security camera out there or something?
Oh, yeah.
There'd be nothing worse than getting this house redeveloped and everything, and then some drunk teens go in one night and decide they want to start a fire.
Drink?
We have cameras all over.
Do you guys want that monitor? I'm probably that monitor, you guys have like
I've seen where.
I don't know,
So
Andrew says we have access on our computer, but I was never taught how to access it.
So somebody does, but it's a paid service, it's monitored. So
And we have an alarm system as well.
it's pretty exposed in rural cloud, so we can find out too. These are great questions for us to find out, but yeah, answer that question. Yes, Jim, we'll figure that out, definitely. But those are, I would say that's more of a, doesn't necessarily have to be a part of this.
Thank you for letting me, to your point about having the non-negotiables and the flex, it seems like you should do that also with timing. So what decisions have to be made first versus which can go second and third? And just off the top of my head, thinking about the biggest expense here are the logs. So if you make that decision to take the brick off and source the logs, then the rest of the stuff, you can figure out what really needs to flex and what not. If you get the really expensive thing out of the way first and agree on that in the windows, like how you want that, then the rest of the decisions, like the floor and all that, plaster versus sheet rock, you'll know how much money you have left. So it seems like that has to go in a sequence too.
I think, unless you guys disagree, brick comes down, all original logs, original windows, original floors. That's.
So someone sourcing the logs that are gonna.
I know, but it's
Yeah, but we're taking the brick down, so what's there? So I
When the brick comes open,
Yeah.
comes off, the window starts opening up.
there's a hole there in the log where the old window was.
Yes.
So to her point, we'd have to source some kind of material to fill that hole. Would it be a log, or would it be faux shutters put on the window
Be a
to cover
log.
over that?
It'd be an entire, unfortunately, you have a 18-inch window. If you want to get rid of it, you're gonna have to replace that whole log.
You don't put sections of logs in, you have to replace the whole log. So that's what she's, I think, talking about. That's a question that we've got to figure out.
Because then if you get down to the floor, like you prefer the planking, but if it eats up $250,000, you might be stuck with, and that's not so, it's the timing. So you gotta make that first decision is the logs, right? Or,
Is it? I don't know.
cause it's your biggest
We've got
part of your budget,
We've got $100,000 in there for the logs, with in mind replacing them and going back to the original.
but if it comes out at 50, I have no idea.
Yeah,
Then
yeah.
you could say, well, now we can pay for plaster.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So my point is, there's probably a sequence of things that have to be done based on construction, that you have to make this decision first, but this can wait till the end versus.
The biggest dollar amount's the logs, and that's the biggest unknown. That's why it's the biggest dollar amount.
Is there any leaks in the roof?
Is it metal roof right now?
Yeah, we're right now.
We'll be able to keep that metal roof, or I gotta replace it and put a new one on?
We'll replace it, put a new one on it. And that's another thing, and do we want to go with another?
I didn't put a, you did on yours.
I did on mine, yeah.
But I didn't do it because I figured, let's wait till the roof starts.
Do we have to?
You don't have to.
Does it period looking enough the way it is?
Last meeting.
There's gonna be another metal roof.
Well, period would be shake shingles.
I know, but
That's
the next step, like shingles, see, whatever it be.
The metal high, the red metal roof, yeah, or green metal, or whatever, so.
I think that's
Okay,
typical what
like
you see.
that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a decision that
We're not.
you guys can make.
No,
Yeah, are we good with
I'm
what's
saying-
there now, or?
Metal would, I would think would be fine.
But could we leave that roof there, or do we have to have?
I think we can leave it.
We may have to use some fixes once the brick comes off. You did not include the roof in this, so it's not part of the estimate.
But definitely be some flex there.
Or should we put that as a little addendum note, like if we had to do a new roof, I would call the price there? I can add, can we add that as just another, if we're gonna refinish the floors, let's move it down to the notes.
I don't think that's.
I think,
Like, I was having the notes, like, what is it?
last week, it showed a metal roof at $18,000 and a demo in it was $8,000.
We can use it
So
regardless.
you're looking at about $26,000.
Hold on.
And use it.
I said in last week's paperwork, it showed it's not here, but it's on last week's, it estimated $18,000 for a new metal roof. And to demo the existing metal roof was $8,000, so it's total $26,000 for a roof.
We just have to be sure that there's no chance of that doing all this work, and then we got any leaks up there, that you get set back with.
Yeah. Cop, squeeze some cop up there.
So everybody,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's good enough, thanks, Mike, we already got.
So is that something we, do we need to throw some worst case scenarios in this budget to say, hey, we're at 549 right now, not right now, but after worst case scenarios, because I'm assuming we have to present it to somebody.
Oh, we got to go through committee.
Oh, I know. So taking a look at all avenues would be beneficial to us and say, okay, now we got all this approved, we're gonna get started. Hey, we really, now that we're up on a lift or whatever, taking the brick out and really looking at the roof, we've decided not to replace it. Okay, that's $30,000 off. I guess what I'm getting at is, when I look at this, if I were over the committee that's got to approve all this, well, where's your roof? Are you going to replace a roof? We don't really know. But we've got a number in there. At least somebody to look at a number.
I can you'll just add that. I can add a block that's alternatives.
There we go.
And make a second page,
Another page.
Because it may be great looking right now, we get there and garage, then patch that.
That's what I'm getting at.
I mean, go ahead.
Because of the unforeseen.
Tommy had said that Mr. Brown said there was some spot on it that's leaking. I don't know where it was at, you know, and his going out there and visiting with everything, he said, he had mentioned that there was some spot somewhere on there that was leaking, but I don't know where it was at.
Yeah, I haven't seen.
I've been inside the house, it's been pouring
Yeah.
rain.
That should be.
Yeah, it looks dry, it looks dry.
There when
I would guess if it was leaking, it's where the back part connects with the front part, I guess, between,
B?
yeah.
A, B?
Yeah, between A and B, because if you'll notice, they've got, down that wall, they've got that metal siding bent up, it's gotta be at least a foot,
Yeah.
and it's caught, I mean, it is caught.
Yeah.
I would suspect it may have leaked there at one time, and they went in and did that, because that looks like a whole sheet that just needs bent it. I don't see how they bent it.
David, is the house secure now? Somebody fix the back door.
The side door had been kicked in, I tried to make it look like it was
It's
closed.
been kicked in several times.
I screwed the back door shut, now.
The back one or the side one?
On the back.
Side one, sorry.
Oh, so you screwed that?
I screwed- oh, yeah.
Then it's secure.
Yeah, it's secured, as it will ever be.
Yeah.
All right.
And just to let you know, Chris, in the past, has used a guy who makes custom windows, period. And for $1,600 a window, I think it's a smoking deal.
Wow.
And then, the period doors, it was interesting to look at those pictures, because that's exactly what we were talking about yesterday, was wide planks with a Z support and back. That's what the doors look like. And so, I don't know what they use for hardware, I guess.
Piece of leather. That's what they started with, they didn't have anything else.
Used for hinges.
They didn't have anything else, they just didn't do it.
Okay, well, what I'm gonna start doing is refining the design, and I'll do the alternative block on here. And, I probably ought to talk to the electrical company out there, and probably need to talk to, White House Water and see what, get some real prices. I mean, we threw in dollar amounts for some of this stuff, but a lot of it I didn't, it's just a guess.
You think you'll be able to use the existing sewer or septic?
I think so. We threw in a little bit of money for that.
Has there been any response from the other departments about the driveway, the cutting in the entryway up there?
We're not, absolutely, I thought about it. I mean, right now, you don't, technically just gravel and a tile. I mean, it's like an old construction site, you just drive over it, you need access. I have it all the time without cutting through anything, so I think that's kind of, we talked about that last week, the workaround, so,
You're not gonna be able to get anything down there until that's done. Well, I guess you could do like David did today, he went up through the elementary school, jumped the curb and up the hill, down around.
Yeah, that's how I do it.
Yeah. Did it together.
I did it on my lawnmower on the other side.
So you're gonna get, thank you for all you guys work on this, David and Chris, for coming and asking me this stuff. This is an important part, and obviously we need to get this more polished and as close to accurate and I mean, things come to the county all the time, they give, everything comes to us as an estimate. Always,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
with all the bids.
Well, that's why I was saying, worst case scenario.
The other one too, but worst case scenario is like, hey, let's replace the floor, not refinish.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the original one, let's not use the existing one, let's, new metal roof, let's put that in there, in construction and new metal roof instead of keeping, but that didn't, hey, this is worst case scenario, we don't think it's necessary, but this is, I'm glad, I'm very happy about the laundry room being D, being able to be a covered porch again, and we can still use C as kind of a utility, multi-use space for like,
That's a big area back there.
it is, and that's gonna be some cost savings right there on having to refinish all that interior, it's just, put it out instead of, I mean, I guess, whatever we can do to make it look period for a porch, in that 1790s.
Cedar posts, hold it up with, so you can put your milk bucket on it.
Absolutely.
Hey, it's my grandfather's. I mean, that's what they did. They didn't use,
You went out and the woods, cut it down.
yeah, you had it up in an hour. So
Back the branches off.
instead of trying to mill it.
Yeah. I'm gonna put, in construction breakdowns, you always put a contingency
was over here?
$409.
$60,000. Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, and plus the $30,000 for a roof, that's $90,000, so we got $50,000 left at that point, if you contingency in the roof.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Okay, 10%.
I mean, that's a pretty,
Brings me to something. What about, I know it's a budget, I think it was budget, or it might have been Gen Ops. We'd asked Mr.,
our finance guys.
I think it was one of the grant writers.
It's all right. Yeah, Scott
Shamrock, I kept trying to call him every name, but and he was asked to look into that. Has anybody had taken away, some type of grant?
No, we decided not to do that. No.
Really?
It's too much.
Well, there are different kind of grants. No, I know all about that. No, I understand all that, but, there's all kinds of grants. There's not just some that are, you're tied down, you gotta do it 88 months, all this, there's all kinds of historic grants.
Everything down, so we're gonna see what we can do with what we have first.
Okay, all right, well, I just wanna make sure, because I knew that he was gonna look into that. and I
Yeah,
knew-
there's some kind of grant, there's gonna be strings tied to it, requirements.
Okay,
We
all
want to
right,
do
that's
this.
fine.
The
All right,
county-
then everybody tonight goes out and buys a lotto ticket.
County project.
It's 217 million, so,
They just, the goal was like, we have $587,000.
Yeah.
Was the original starting budget for this.
that's fine, I just knew we talked about, or he had talked about it, and didn't know, I never had heard anything.
I never heard him talk about it from the table, at least, maybe, but it's like.
Well, somebody asked him to look into it.
Okay, yeah, that might have been original on the way on, and I was pushing for it, but then they basically told me all the caveats, like, oh, that sounds like a terrible idea. But they looked into it, and it was like, you don't.
And that's what it was.
Yeah, because you're looking at a 5-year project, that should be a 5-month project.
Yeah, no, okay.
I think, for what it's worth, even if you add, let's just say even if we added a roof cost in there, added a white plank flooring in there, we're still under budget. And I think that's pretty cool.
I think
For a 1790 house.
I was pleasantly surprised by that.
I think that's really good.
Well,
And we were having that.
Oh, we were.
We're going, okay, we think it's gonna cost $3,500, let's go with 5.
Well, and that's the difference between, unfortunately, government mentality versus like the business world mentality, which is the real world of like being efficient. The government's just going to bloat it and unnecessarily. And I was thinking, gosh, this could be $1 million project because the county's involved in it.
Yeah.
You know, but it's like knowing, or the state's involved in it. The grant is like, oh, we can get $400,000 in match up. Let's make it $1 million project versus like, that's the kind of thinking that we have to overcome here is that, just that mentality of just other people's money, and let's just blow it, versus like, this not be conservative, this is a gift with a limited amount, so, and we can do it within the amount, with no extra frills. And if the county or the school board later day want to do all this other crazy stuff outside the house, but I mean, that's what I wanted to print out to you guys. This, what you have here, and I appreciate if there's a copy, to give you one, it's our last resolution was in October, but it repeats the will and council, all stand for the reading of the council. The first one out, with the historic home currently situated thereon being permanently maintained by the county as the park centerpiece. And so we've established the park, the William and Martha Brown Park, Memorial Park, and that's what they did. The county commission did the same thing at the Bridal House. The Bridal House, and we have the park named after the last owner of the Bridal House. It's a couple acre lot of just grass. That's the park. That's a park. That's what he said. That's it. That's the same thing. That's the same thing we've done here. We've followed precedent set by the previous county commission with the Bridal House for this. We're doing the exact same thing they did. So we've established the park, the name of the landowners, the home. In my opinion, should be the Latimer home. Is the name, and I think that's what, in honor of their 200-year history.
You want to name it Latimer Brown or just Latimer?
The Latimer, in my opinion. It's a Latimer house because at the William and Martha Brown Memorial Park. I'm just getting, that's not a part of this discussion for construction, but I'm just getting into the weeds here because it's an homage to the family who built it. It wasn't Brown. The Browns just took it over in the 60s. But it's, whatever honor and homage, whether they do a plaque with their photos, in there, the Browns and put family photos and
to do a whole exhibit just for William and Martha Brown inside the home. But I think it's the Latimer home, because that's what the home is. It's like the Latimer home. The Douglas Park House is not the last person who owned it and lived it. It's the original building in the pioneer days, whatever. So I think it's the same thing, but it is.
Mr. Brown recognized the historical significance of it too.
Absolutely, that's what we want to maintain. But I think it's just this is important, the resolution, to understand what passed unanimously by the county commission, the language in this. I just wanted to point that out. But that's just, I know it's not part of this discussion, but it's mine. That's what I think should be done, the right thing to do, since this park is already named that. And then give the honor to the family. So, all right, David, so you guys are going to come back a little bit more, beat this up some.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk with our finance and legal department about the architectural, basically our construction and renovation policy that we passed in November. So we're following this policy, and we've got to stick to this as part of this process. Like, we're doing the entire step one now. I mean, we're doing it all and getting this out. I think we're in good shape on that. Obviously, if we're able to present this to Gen Ops the 1st of July, we want to clean it up and make some kind of document package, and get some.
So that's where it goes to Gen Ops.
It goes to Gen Ops next. It's got to go to the finance director before it goes to Gen Ops. Right. It's got to be right for our finance department to approve it, to go to Gen Ops, and then it would go to budget, and then it goes to the full commission. Yeah. It could all happen in 1 month. It could all happen in 6 months. I don't know how to answer that question.
So information needs to come in the week of the 16th to the 20th in order to get it to the finance director of the 23rd.
Is that house covered by any kind of insurance?
Yes, $500,000.
Yeah, it is. So David, I would need information from you and Chris by the week of the 16th of June, that week. Because I would need to get stuff to David Law and finance department by Monday the 23rd. So the 16th and the 20th that week. So it's roughly 3 weeks away. The 19th of June is 3 weeks from today. But that just, I know you're going to do it faster than that, but buttoning this up, anything else we can add to the spreadsheet work that you guys have done, the estimates. Obviously, we've got some drawings, we've got square footage. We'll talk about the architect, because we know, as far as the initial concept of projects, we're down the alignment. We've gone through 1A, B, C, and D. Well, not C and D.
Government measurements is going light years.
Yeah, and that's because we're doing these ad hocs. We've got it 2 weeks in a row, so thanks you guys for doing this. But so we could potentially, I don't want to plan another ad hoc right now. We've got it tentatively for June the 3rd. So I'll say this: the 3rd Thursday in June, which is June the 19th, the county building is closed for the Juneteenth holiday. So we could move it to the 18th, which is which I'm out of town, actually on vacation that entire week, so I won't be here. But you guys, if you wanted to do that week, you can meet, but I don't know if we need to meet again. I think we've got enough stuff, but if you guys wanted to meet that week, you could, and do it, call, do that date, lead that meeting. The week of the 16th and 20th of June, to get that information from you at last, so we can get it to David Law. I'd like to get it to that week a week ahead of time. So if you have problems, we can push back. You guys can find things.
We'll go right to work.
The next time you see me and this talk come up, probably the next Gen Ops meeting after that, right?
July 7th,
So,
if approved by finance.
but if things come up between now and then, we can always add an ad hoc meeting in there.
Yeah, we could do a meeting the week of the 23rd. We could do a meeting the week of the 9th of June.
We can do the first and the fourth.
We could do a meeting next week. We have.
We only need to notice it for 3 days, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, 3 days is kind of the safer. 2 days usually. I always said 2 days to former law director did, but like 3 days, I think is ideal.
We have a short week right before the first Gen Ops meeting.
Yeah. So I think we're flexible with days and times, but I think we've got what we need. I think it's, getting buttoned up. So we can talk to you and get some more information. Get your contact information, so we start emailing information. Send you all the photos stuff we have. We can look through it all. Would be great. Get your opinion on that.
There was one thing that Chris and I talked about, that how, we're going to have to come back with some sort of a sighting on D, C, and D.
An exterior siding, like a wood. That's a question. Like, what was? So is that accounted for in here? The wood, like a siding that was 1800?
We did go exterior construction. We did a siding
lap siding, possibly a cementitious material.
Where's that?
It's under exterior construction, almost center.
Siding, okay, I see. So that would be the B and C, the siding. Okay, so we're got that.
Yeah, we put in 12,000, but we, you know, I used, it's not hardy board, it's called Nietzsche board, and it's made by Georgia Pacific or somebody like that. Yeah, and it's a good way to go. What did they do at the Clark?
We have party board.
You have hardy board?
They started out with wood, and then after 5 years had to replace it, so it's
Yeah.
party board now.
Wood just doesn't last.
So we would need to use a modern day product for that siding. That is.
That's what we want to do, yeah.
I think so. I mean, if it's more cost effective for that long, for the permanent maintenance of the home and for the, in that sense.
Yeah, I'll do a takeoff and talk building supply up.
But you've already got that on here, so it's kind of.
Yeah, I want to tighten up numbers. Yeah, that's just an estimate.
Like I said, is that product, is that like mold resistant, moss and stuff like that? Because that's gonna grow in that, because it's down.
Yeah, well, that's got more to do with the paint, the moss resistance and stuff, and, you know,
It won't rot or deteriorate.
Right, because it's cementitious, and the difference between hardy board and Nietzsche board is a monolithic manufacturing process where hardy board is layered, and the layer can peel back, so, and the Nietzsche board was cheaper when I put it on in 1920.
Well, I know we're optimistic this is under budget. I've been here 7 years, and this is only the second time that any project has been estimated under budget.
Well, I'll be more than happy to help out.
This one was just 2 months ago in our health department, and they came in under budget on something, so the county's not spending more. But that was a surprise from Hal Hendricks, and so he's the first departmental head that's ever come in under budget on a project.
But it came in under the threat of canceling the project if it came in under.
Well, true. That's very important. Yeah. Canceling the project.
It's called having a gun to your
It
head.
may be a new way to go forward.
But this we know we have.
It's just, well, we want to spend $4 million, so see how close we get to that.
Yeah, I texted you a while back, I think this, I've always thought it's definitely doable.
Yeah.
Even if you go to, I shouldn't say the extreme, but some of the, you know, the restoration process of period, even if you go to some extremes into that, I think the $500,000, almost 600, is definitely doable. I really do.
Well, it is right now.
Chris, what would be the most period of 1830 and 40? Was like a lap 6-inch siding?
Yes.
Yeah, lap 6-inch. Okay.
Textured, something like wood, maybe.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Vinyl side.
Any other questions? Yeah, vinyl, that's right.
Yeah.
Then melt it down.
They had that back in the 1800s.
Yeah, there's a lot of metal around it, so it reflects, so it melts it and melts it, you know. Any other questions or comments, or we feel like we did a shot? Jim, Mike, you guys feel good?
We haven't gone back into session yet, so is there any questions from, I mean, we've done a lot of talking with y'all, so.
There's only one order of business once we go in session, and that's the adjournment.
Right.
Is there anything, because it obviously doesn't sound like it's gonna be, or it sounds like it's gonna be a couple of months before we put the shovel in the ground. Is there anything that I could be doing that we need to approve demo-wise on the front end, so once we get ready to go?
Well, we have to have, I mean, we
I
got
just
to it. Yeah.
I just see some opportunities to go out there and do some things, but
Sure, now this is government at work now, and this is, we gotta do this.
You can go bush hog if you want to, I can do that.
What did you say you'd invoiced so far?
the inspection,
Yeah, I mean, we had 4.
we had
4,200?
4,200?
So what are we at? Because we have
We're at
5,000.
whatever 26 and 1,500 is, that's where we're at.
So is there room to do some more? You can do some more exploratory work on some of the bricks?
So we originally
Oh, you mean money-wise, Tim?
Yeah.
We've only got $400, as far as I know, left, because we had, from from the initial assessment, because I had 1,200 for Derryberry. Obviously, David and I have done a lot of that. So I think we've got 400 left from the initial assessment, from the draws per se, left.
Did you get all your answers?
Are you talking about that first draw of the 2,500?
Yeah.
Well, the first was 2015, right?
Yes.
And the second was 2,500.
Right.
Which is 4515, and what have you invoiced for?
42 something.
Okay, so yeah, there's.
$300. Do you have all your questions answered on the brick tie-in and stuff like that? Is there any more exploratory work you can do there?
I feel
Better
confident that
answers?
that the brick is not tied into the house.
So just.
Now,
So a big bad wolf comes to blow that brick down.
Not a law to protect the bridge.
Yeah, I think right now it's just getting to this spot of just like, what's the plan, and moving through this approval process. Because it's, the purpose of the exploratory, we gotta get this moving. It's good report.
So there's nothing that I need to do or David and I need to do.
I don't think so. Okay. Now, we've got what we need to do this. This is the original objective, is to get here, to then get here and here, to figure out what exactly is happening, you know, with these two documents, and just refining it, and then getting in front of our finance and legal, and going through TCA code and figuring out what's required and what's not, so that we can get it in front of some committees and like in more of a buttoned up package, with some photos, like at the gym, things for this, but, you know, that thing. This is great, this package that you sent. Can you email this to me, or?
I'll actually have to go back and I actually printed it, I didn't retain them.
Oh, okay, well, I'm gonna keep this then, from now
But
on.
I'll do some research on replacement logs to see, you know, like Honest Abe log homes.
And I'll talk to.
Can you even go with can y'all even do a 16 to an 18-inch log? What do y'all, I'll do some research on stuff like that.
What are like other local people who do this kind of stuff for a hobby and fun? Like, I know, I'm talking about like, you know, taking, well, one of my former constituents, Chrissy's constituent now, is a mechanical engineer and created his own basically like not lumber, the old backyard he did, like taking huge trees and milling them down, like, yeah. So there's people who can make logs. I'm just, you know,
Well,
in Sumner County.
Yeah.
We have several mills around Sumner County, and even like in Gordonsville and stuff. And my next door neighbor would know all those places to go.
Well, there's one right down the road in Cotton Town.
Is it?
Sure it is. I drove by the other day.
Talking about the old lumber mill, Cascade. That's right down there.
In where?
Cascade. The old lumber mill, Cascade. I used to get fired with my dad when I was a kid in Cascade.
We didn't tell you. Your
Well, I
dad.
know when I left, the last time I was out there, I wanted to see if that log, the mill was there, and it's anyways. When you go to the red light off the Liberty Creek, or take a left, like you're going toward Cotton Town,
Okay.
and just prior to the post office, take a left, and there's a sawmill back in there.
There's a sawmill in Westmoreland too.
Yes.
Oh, there's sawmills there.
Well, and the other
You'd be
thing-
surprised in this day and time, these small sawmills, they're just everywhere.
Chris was telling me yesterday that he made a post on Facebook about how blessed he was to be working on his house. He's already been contacted by people who have log cabins they want to get in. The problem is the wood isn't big enough.
Yeah.
For what we need.
Yeah. In that, something else.
Yeah, so Granny's old log cabin is out here and it's just melting.
Falling apart, come get it, you know. So I've actually been to look at a couple of them, you know, in preparation. But they, yeah, like David said, they're so weathered and just, eating up,
We had trees that big.
eating up the termites.
What kind of wood, you know what kind of wood those logs are?
I'm gonna take a sample and send it to a lab.
I know Mr. Tommy, last week, he was saying some of those pictures looked like they were chestnut.
Well, and one of the contractors, the developers that I know, said he knows of the house, and he says, I wouldn't be surprised if it was chestnut, and I've got a cabin of chestnut that you need to come look at.
Okay, so he thinks chestnut. Yeah.
Well, they would've been around that time period, they would've still been growing for the blind.
I didn't think chestnuts got that big.
Oh, they
it could be random, you know, random, yeah.
Right, that's the other thing, is it could be several different kinds of trees.
Yeah, they cut down whatever they could find.
They did.
Right, so.
But chestnut and poplar was,
That was common.
That was common, yeah.
The chestnut tree was, some of them were as big, up in that Appalachian Mountains, were, some of them were, they were called the redwoods of the east.
Really?
Oh, yeah, they were huge.
I know tulip poplars have resistance to insects and stuff, and so that was a preferred
Do you
material.
have any contacts with Amish?
Oh,
yeah, some sawmills and possibly.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them up around Stockville there, Allen County.
About even in the wood, big enough.
I don't think you're gonna find them on the computer though. I don't think, oh, yes, sir. I don't think you're gonna find them there. See, you keep looking, but I don't think you're gonna find them. Really?
That's where I got the idea, but the Chamber of Commerce probably is putting that there for me.
One of their American cousins is posted on.
All right, anything else?
Chris, what do you think is the longest log we would need? Because I told you, Don, when they.
30-footer, easily.
Really, we would,
You've got some solid 30-footers, you know, below the windows, above the windows.
That is a big,
that's a massive
That's
log,
massive.
it's a serious mill, too.
yeah. That's a big log.
Did you want to say something? Did you want to say something? Yes.
I was just gonna ask about the Amish.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, I think I've got my work in order.
All right. Any other questions? Well, I'll bring us back in order. You got one more
Motion to,
adjourn?
adjourn.
Second, all fair side?
Aye.
Aye.
Well, I hope I'm not gonna be able to go back out to the house for a